House Democrats are here today because, as we've previewed last week at the unveiling of our caucus agenda for this session, for too many North Carolinians, the basic necessities of life have become too hard to afford. Housing costs more, utility bills cost more, food costs more, and for working people across the state, their paychecks have not kept up. Affordability is not just an abstract policy idea, it is folks' realities. It's a family trying to figure out how to stay in their homes, or seniors struggling to keep the lights on. It's a working person who can't buy groceries without falling behind on their bills. We have to be honest about what's driving these higher costs for folks. This affordability crisis didn't appear out of nowhere. It's been driven by powerful interests and bad policy choices by this majority that has pushed costs down onto ordinary people. When corporations can shift energy costs onto ratepayers, when wages lag far behind the cost of living, and when housing supply is choked by delays and speculation, working people pay the price. House Democrats are offering a different approach. While you hear more about our food policies later this week and our child care policies in the following weeks, today we're going to be addressing three of the sharpest pain points for families: utility bills, housing, and stagnant wages. Our caucus is putting forward legislation to lower these cost pressures, to expand housing supply, and raise wages so that people in North Carolina can afford not to just survive, but to live. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn things over to Representative Lindsay Prather to talk more about data centers.
Thank you, Representative Alston. I am State Representative Lindsay Prather. I represent District 115 in Buncombe County. Data centers have received a ton of coverage in recent months, and rightfully so. They place enormous demands on our electric grid, our water systems, and our public infrastructure. Communities are understandably concerned about the prospect of data centers being built near their houses. The state has an obvious role to play here in protecting its citizens. Massive new costs through electricity generation and water needs have to come from somewhere. When the state fails to act, families like mine, small businesses like yours, and communities that we all live in bear the cost. That cost shows up in higher utility bills, increased pressure on public resources, and a greater risk on long-term affordability in all of our communities. And because these sorts of facilities are so new, North Carolinians can end up footing the bill twice through incentives and subsidies that never contemplated projects like these. What we are proposing is to make certain that the large and wealthy corporations building these data centers foot the bill, not you. Our bill, the Ratepayer and Resource Protection Act, requires that large data centers make detailed disclosures about the resources that they will consume. They would be required to demonstrate that they will comply with on-site clean generation requirements, water use standards, and cost-based utility service requirements. We would also require that data centers pay electric rates that are proportional with the cost of actually servicing the data centers. No more cost shifting onto working families. The public should be held harmless from increased costs associated with large data centers coming to town. The bill also restricts subsidies and tax incentives for data centers and requires annual reporting on electricity, water use, and on-site generation. North Carolinians want us to get ahead of this. There have already been about a dozen communities that have either passed one-year moratoriums or are poised to. All of this is a lot of information, but here is the upshot. If a company wants to build a data center in North Carolina, they can. They must simply pay their own way and stop shifting the cost onto you, me, and families like ours. Next up, we have Representative Monica Johnson-Hostler to talk about utility bills.
Thank you. My name is Monica Johnson-Hostler, and I have the privilege of representing District 33. And I'm going to talk to you about a pain point that we are all feeling every day in this growing economy. For millions of North Carolinians, the bills families dread the most is the one that we have to pay the most, and that's our utility bills. Electricity is not optional. It is an essential service for our families that need to heat and cool their homes, refrigerate their food, their medicine, and live the life that they deserve to live enjoyably. Families do not enjoy enough protection against unjustified charges, cost shifting, or a system that prioritizes corporate profits over household affordability. But when prices goes up, it leaves families without a lot of options. They're forced to cut costs wherever they can, and they also can scarcely do that right now. For low-income households especially, this hits really hard. It's the folks who can least afford these bills who are bearing so much of the cost and the burden. Again, this is a place where the state has an obvious role to play. Regulators need to put the public interest front and center. Affordability should be high among all of our priority list and guiding principles when it comes to grading how utilities perform and how our regulators work. This is why our Ratepayer and Resource Protection Act is so important. If a utility needs to expand its generation to serve data centers, that company should foot the bill, not our customers. The bill would prohibit the Utilities Commission from approving rate surcharges and structures unless they ensure large data center customers bear the full cost that you and I are protected from, the rate increases and the standard costs. Second, the bill strengthens the fuel cost and recovery standards. The burden of proof remains on the utility bills companies to show that fuel and fuel-related costs are indeed that you and I will remain protected from them, and they're reasonable and prudent. Ratepayers shouldn't foot the bill. Poor decisions that are based on poor decisions of our utility companies. Third, we are reforming performance-based regulations so that it actually serves the public. Right now, utility companies can ask for rate structures that reward them based on meeting certain performance goals. But the House Democrats want to make sure that these goals actually serve the public. Our bill says that if a utility wants to be rewarded for performance, it will show real results in lowering our customers and our energy bills, reducing shutoffs, improving efficiency, cutting peak demand, and keeping overall costs under control. We are tired of paying the outrageous costs for things that we have no choice but to buy, like our electricity. This bill would go a long way to center affordability in the conversation around utility regulations. Now I'll turn it over to Representative Tim Longus.
Thank you all for being here today. My name is Tim Longest. I represent House District 34 here in Wake County. I'm here to talk to you about raising the minimum wage. At the center of the cost of living crisis is a simple truth. Too many people in North Carolina are working hard and still not earning enough to keep up. Costs rise year after year, but wages for too many workers remain stuck. Our state still has the lowest possible minimum wage at $7.25, and that's because our state minimum wage law is set even lower, which falls below the federal floor. Too many people are paying more for housing, food, cars, and health care, while the number on their paycheck stays the same. But wages paid to working North Carolinians must reflect the rising costs of basic necessities, and indexing the minimum wage to inflation will help preserve purchasing power over time. When people cannot afford basic living costs, the result is more hardship, more instability, and less economic security. A low-wage economy is not a sign of strength. It is a sign that too much of the burden of growth is being placed on the very people who can help create it. The culprit of these problems is an outdated wage structure and a political status quo that has allowed pay to lag behind the realities of the household budget we're facing today. It is a system that tells workers to absorb inflation on their own while preserving the power of employers to benefit from cheap labor. Indeed, when I tried to amend the budget last year to increase the minimum wage to just $13.50 by 2029, every House Republican voted it down. House Democrats believe that has to change. Our Fair Minimum Wage Act raises the state minimum wage to $15 an hour and then adjusts it upward automatically for inflation each year so that the law does not fall behind the cost of living again. The bill also sets an $11 minimum wage for small businesses, also indexed annually, to account for the fact that not all businesses can easily absorb increased costs in the same way that large corporations can. According to analysis by the Economic Policy Institute, 1.2 million North Carolinians make below $15 an hour. This bill would go a long way toward helping them afford the basics of living. It doesn't just help those workers and their families either. The Institute for Policy Studies estimates that for every additional dollar a low-wage worker earns, that worker puts $1.21 back into the economy. The bill also repeals the restriction on local minimum wages, allowing local governments to adopt higher minimum wages where local conditions demand it. The cost of living is not the same in every community. and local governments should not be forbidden from responding to their own markets. The bill also creates a wage board within the Department of Labor to review wages annually and publish targets for the state to remain competitive while allowing wage earners to afford housing, health care, and other basic necessities. Finally, it establishes a short-time compensation program to subsidize wages during hard times to prevent layoffs, helping workers keep jobs, benefits, and stability during economic downturns. There's a book that was written by Governor Terry Sanford shortly after his tenure as governor. It's called, "But What About the People?" That's the question Democrats have always focused on, and that's the question House Democrats are answering today with these bills addressing the cost of living. While the majority fails to pass a budget despite one-party control of the legislature, House Democrats are focused on delivering the results that matter to the people of North Carolina, lowering costs and raising wages so that every North Carolinian can afford to pursue their dreams.